The thunder rolled across the Montana sky as Katherine Turner stared at her reflection in the cracked mirror, tears streaming down her face. The beautiful ivory wedding dress that had belonged to her mother lay in a heap on the floor, the delicate fabric refusing to stretch across her ample curves. In just 3 days, she was supposed to walk down the aisle of Quartz Hill's only church. But now that dream seemed as distant as the horizon beyond the windswept plains. The year was 1885, and Catherine Katy, to most folks in town, had never felt more alone. At 24, she had long since passed what many considered the prime marrying age, and this dress was supposed to be her redemption, her chance at happiness after years of pitying glances and whispered comments about her size. Katy. Her mother's voice came from the other side of the bedroom door. "May I come in?" Before she could answer, the door creaked open, and Martha Turner's weathered face fell at the sight of her daughter surrounded by yards of useless fabric. "Oh, sweetheart," she said softly, crossing the room to gather Katherine in her arms. "Don't fret. We'll figure something out." "There's nothing to figure out, Ma," Katherine sobbed. "I can't marry a man who can't even look at me. Charles only proposed because his father wants our land." "He doesn't love me." Martha stroked her daughter's chestnut hair. "Then perhaps it's a blessing this dress doesn't fit." Katherine pulled away, wiping her eyes. "A blessing? Everyone in Quartz Hill will be talking about how I couldn't fit into a wedding dress, how I'm the fat girl no one wants." "That's not true," Martha insisted. "You're beautiful, Katy, and the right man will see that." Katherine turned back to the mirror, studying her reflection. She wasn't ugly. She had her father's warm brown eyes and her mother's high cheekbones. Her hair fell in thick waves down her back, and her skin was clear and smooth. But she was big, larger than most women in town, and in a place where hardship and manual labor kept most folks rail thin, Katherine's size made her stand out. "I'm calling it off," she said finally. "I won't marry Charles Henderson. Not now, not ever," Martha sighed. "Your father won't be pleased. Pa can't force me to marry someone who looks at me like I'm some sort of mistake." The next morning, Katherine rose early. She'd barely slept, her mind racing with thoughts of what would come next. The Hendersons owned the bank in town, and they'd been pressuring her father to sell their ranch for months. The marriage had been her father's idea, a way to keep the land in the family while ensuring Katherine's future. She dressed quickly in her plainest skirt and blouse, then made her way downstairs. Her father was already at the table, nursing a cup of coffee and reading yesterday's newspaper. "Morning, Pa," she said, pouring herself a cup. James Turner looked up, his expression softening at the sight of his only child. "Katy, your mother told me what happened yesterday." Katherine tensed. "I won't marry him, Pa." To her surprise, her father nodded. "I know, and I won't make you. I was wrong to try." Relief washed over her. "What about the ranch?" "We'll manage," he said, though worry lines creased his forehead. "The cattle drive next month should bring in enough to pay the bank note." Katherine sat down across from him. "Let me help more. I can ride as well as any hand we've got." James shook his head. "It's not proper, Katy." "Proper won't save our ranch, Pa." Before he could respond, the sound of hoofbeats approached the house. James stood, moving to the window. Riders coming in. 3 of them. Katherine joined him, peering out at the strangers approaching their modest ranch house. 2 of them she'd never seen before, but the third, a tall man with broad shoulders astride a Palomino stallion, was unmistakable. "That's Nathan Wade," her father said, surprise in his voice. "Heard he was back in these parts." Katherine's heart skipped a beat. Nathan Wade. The name conjured memories of a lanky boy with a quick smile and kind eyes who'd left Quartz Hill 7 years ago to make his fortune. They'd been friends once, before he disappeared without so much as a goodbye. "What's he doing here?" she whispered, more to herself than her father. Guess we're about to find out. James opened the front door as the men dismounted. Nathan removed his hat, revealing hair the color of wheat and eyes as blue as a summer sky. He'd filled out since Katherine had last seen him, his shoulders broader, his face more weathered. But his smile was the same warm and genuine. "Mr. Turner," he said, extending a hand. "It's been a long time." James shook it firmly. "Indeed it has, son. What brings you to our doorstep?" Nathan gestured to the men behind him. "This is Pete Rodriguez and Sam Mitchell. We're looking for hands for a cattle drive up to Montana territory. Heard you might have some men to spare." Katherine stepped onto the porch, and Nathan's gaze shifted to her. For a moment he stared, confusion flickering across his features before recognition dawned. "Katie Turner," he said, his voice softer now. "Is that you?" She nodded, suddenly conscious of her plain clothes and the hair she'd hastily tied back. "Hello, Nate." A smile spread across his face. "Well, I'll be damned. You've grown up." "So have you," she replied, unable to keep a small smile from her lips. James cleared his throat. "Why don't you boys come inside? Martha's got breakfast on and we can talk business." As the men filed past her into the house, Nathan paused. "It's good to see you, Katie," he said quietly. "Real good." Something in his tone made her cheeks warm. "You too, Nate." Over breakfast, Nathan explained his situation. He'd spent the last 7 years working his way up from a ranch hand to trail boss. Now, he was putting together his own outfit to drive 500 head of cattle from Texas up to Montana. "Pays well," he told James, "and I need experienced men." James nodded thoughtfully. "We're short-handed as it is, but I might be able to spare 1 or 2 of my boys." "Actually," Katherine interjected, "I was just telling Pa that I want to help with our own drive next month." Nathan's eyebrows rose. "You ride with the men." "No," James said firmly. "But I could," Katherine insisted. "I'm a better rider than half the hands, and I know this land better than anyone." Nathan studied her for a moment, then glanced at James. "She always was a good rider, sir. I remember that much." James frowned. "It's not about riding, Nathan. It's about propriety. A young woman has no business on a cattle drive." "With all due respect, Mr. Turner," Nathan said carefully, "times are changing. I've seen women doing all sorts of jobs out west, trail cooks, scouts, even driving the cattle themselves." Katherine couldn't believe her ears. Nathan weighed, defending her right to work alongside men. The boy, she remembered, had been kind but conventional. The man before her seemed different, more open-minded. "It's dangerous work," James argued. "So is losing our ranch," Katherine countered. "Pa, please, let me help." Martha, who had been quiet throughout the exchange, finally spoke up. "James, she's right. We need every hand we can get, and Katie's always been more comfortable on a horse than at a sewing circle." James looked from his wife to his daughter, then to Nathan, who nodded slightly. Finally, he sighed. "Fine, you can help with the preparations, but the actual drive we'll see." It wasn't a victory, but it was a start. Katherine smiled gratefully at her mother, then caught Nathan's eye. He winked, and something fluttered in her chest, a feeling she hadn't experienced in years. After breakfast, Nathan asked to speak with Katherine alone. They walked to the corral where his Palomino grazed alongside the Turner horses. "That's a fine animal," Katherine noted, admiring the stallion's muscled form. "Thanks. His name's Coyote. Fast as one, too." Nathan leaned against the fence, turning to face her. "So, what's this about a wedding dress that doesn't fit?" Katherine froze. "How did you small town?" He shrugged. "Stopped by the saloon last night, heard things." Heat crept up her neck and into her cheeks. "I'd rather not discuss it." Nathan's expression softened. "I'm sorry, Katie, I didn't mean to pry. It's just Charles Henderson." "Really, it was an arrangement," she admitted. "For the ranch." And now I've called it off, or I will once I see him. Nathan nodded, relief evident in his eyes. Good. Henderson's not worth your time. You've been gone 7 years, Katherine reminded him. You don't know anything about him, or me for that matter. I know enough, Nathan said quietly. I know you deserve someone who sees you for who you are. Someone who loves all of you, not just what you can do for them. The words hung between them, loaded with meaning Katherine wasn't ready to unpack. Instead, she changed the subject. So, Montana Territory, that's quite a trek. Nathan accepted the shift gracefully. It is. But the payoff's worth it. Beef prices are high up north and the railroad's making shipping easier. And after the drive, will you come back to Quartz Hill? He considered this. Hadn't thought that far ahead, but I've been wandering a long time. Might be nice to put down roots somewhere. Before Katherine could respond, a rider appeared on the horizon, approaching the ranch at a gallop. As he drew closer, Katherine recognized Charles Henderson's bay gelding. Speaking of the devil, she muttered. Nathan followed her gaze. Want me to make myself scarce? Katherine shook her head. No, stay. She wasn't sure why his presence made her feel braver, but it did. Charles reined in his horse sharply, dust billowing around him. He was handsome in a conventional way, well-dressed, clean-shaven, with carefully combed brown hair. But his eyes were cold as he dismounted and strode toward them. Katherine, he said stiffly, ignoring Nathan, your mother said I'd find you out here. Charles, she acknowledged, this is Nathan Wade, an old friend. Charles barely glanced at Nathan before returning his attention to Katherine. I need to speak with you, privately. Anything you have to say to me you can say in front of Nate, she replied, surprising herself with her boldness. Charles's jaw tightened. Very well. I heard you've been spreading rumors about calling off our engagement. It's not a rumor if it's true, Katherine said. I won't be marrying you, Charles, because of a dress, he sneered. My mother said you were upset about not fitting into some old rag. Katherine flinched as if he'd slapped her. Next to her, she felt Nathan stiffen. The dress has nothing to do with it, she said, fighting to keep her voice steady. I won't marry a man who doesn't love me, who only wants my family's land. Charles laughed, a harsh sound. Love? You should be grateful anyone would have you at all looking the way you do. Before Katherine could respond, Nathan stepped forward, his face dark with anger. That's enough, Henderson. Charles sized him up, seemingly noticing him for the first time. And who are you to interfere? Some saddle tramp passing through. I'm the man telling you to apologize to the lady, Nathan said, his voice dangerously soft. Charles scoffed. Lady? She's nothing but a— He never finished the sentence. Nathan's fist connected with his jaw, sending him stumbling backward. Charles recovered quickly, charging forward with a roar, but Nathan sidestepped, tripping him easily. Charles fell face first into the dirt. Get off my land, Katherine said, her voice shaking with anger. And tell your father our agreement is off. We'll find another way to pay the bank note. Charles scrambled to his feet, spitting blood. You'll regret this, he snarled. Both of you. He mounted his horse and galloped away, leaving a cloud of dust in his wake. Katherine turned to Nathan, whose knuckles were red from the impact. You shouldn't have done that. He was insulting you, Nathan said simply. No man has the right to speak to a woman that way. I could have handled him. I know you could have, but you shouldn't have to. Katherine studied him, trying to reconcile this man with the boy she'd known. You've changed, Nate. He smiled slightly. So have you, Katie, but in all the ways that matter, I think we're still the same. Over the next week, Katherine found herself spending more and more time with Nathan. He helped around the ranch, fixing fences and mending tack, working alongside the Turner hands as if he'd never left. In the evenings, he'd sit on the porch with her father, discussing cattle prices and the best routes north, while Katherine listened from her rocking chair, pretending to sew. She couldn't deny the attraction she felt. It wasn't just his physical appearance, though that certainly didn't hurt. It was the way he treated her, with respect and genuine interest. He listened when she spoke, valued her opinions, and never once made her feel self-conscious about her size. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Nathan found her alone by the creek that ran through the Turner property. "Your father's agreed to let 2 of his hands join my drive," he said, sitting beside her on a flat rock. "Says he can manage with what he's got left." Katherine nodded, trailing her fingers through the cool water. "That's good. He also mentioned your ranch is having financial troubles." She sighed. "The bank's calling in our note. Without the Henderson marriage, we're scrambling to find the money." Nathan was quiet for a moment. "I could help." Katherine looked up sharply. "We don't need charity, Nate." "It's not charity," he insisted. "It's an investment. Your father runs one of the best operations in the county. I'd be proud to be part of it." "And what would you want in return?" Nathan met her gaze steadily. "A partnership, nothing more, nothing less." Katherine studied him, searching for ulterior motives but finding none. "Why would you do this?" "Because I care about your family," he said. Then, more softly, "Because I care about you, Katie." Her heart raced. "You barely know me anymore." "Then let me get to know you again." He reached out, hesitantly taking her hand. "Come on the cattle drive with me." "What?" She pulled her hand away. "That's crazy." "Is it? You said yourself you're a good rider." "We need a cook, and your mother says you're the best in the county." "A cook," Katherine repeated, disappointment coloring her voice. Nathan laughed. "For starters. But I've seen you handle horses, Katie. Once we're on the trail, there'll be plenty of opportunity for you to prove yourself in other ways." "My father would never allow it." "He might if you're going as my assistant." Katherine narrowed her eyes. "Your assistant? And what exactly would that entail?" "Cooking primarily," Nathan said. "But also keeping the books, helping with supplies, and yes, riding when needed. It's hard work, Katie, but it pays well. Enough to help save your ranch." She considered it. The idea was outrageous, a woman on a cattle drive, traveling hundreds of miles with a group of men. Yet something about it called to her, a chance for adventure beyond the confines of Quartz Hill. "I'll think about it," she said finally. Nathan nodded, respecting her need for time. "That's all I ask." As they walked back to the house, Katherine's mind raced with possibilities. The thought of leaving home was terrifying, but the alternative, watching her father lose the ranch he'd built from nothing, was worse. And then there was Nathan, with his kind eyes and gentle manner, offering her a chance at something she'd never thought possible: independence. That night she couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned, weighing her options. By dawn, she'd made her decision. She found her father in the barn, saddling his horse for the morning rounds. "Pa," she said, taking a deep breath, "I want to go with Nathan on the cattle drive." James paused, looking up at his daughter. "Absolutely not." "Pa, listen, it's not proper, Katherine. A young woman traveling with a bunch of cowboys. What would people say?" "I don't care what people say," she insisted. "This is about our ranch. Nathan's offering good money and we need it." James shook his head. "We'll find another way." "What way, Pa?" "The bank's calling in our note in less than 3 months. The local drive won't bring in enough, and you know it." Her father sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. "Katie, these drives are dangerous. Bandits, Indians, wild animals, not to mention the work itself. It's no place for a woman." "I'm stronger than you think," Katherine said softly. "And Nathan will look out for me. You trust him, don't you?" James hesitated. "I do. He's a good man. But Katie, you're my only child. If anything happened to you, nothing will happen," she promised. "And when I come back, I'll have enough money to help save our home." Isn't that worth the risk? Her father studied her for a long moment, seeing not just his daughter but the determined woman she'd become. Finally, he nodded. Your mother won't like it. Let me worry about Ma, Katherine said, relief washing over her. Convincing Martha proved easier than expected. Her mother had always been the practical one, and she understood the financial realities they faced better than anyone. You'll need proper clothes, Martha said, already mentally packing. Trousers, for one thing. I won't have you riding side saddle across half the country. Katherine hugged her mother tightly. Thank you for understanding. Martha pulled back, cupping her daughter's face. I understand that sometimes a woman has to make her own path. Just be careful, Katie. Not everyone will see your worth as clearly as we do. Nathan does, Katherine said quietly. A knowing smile crossed Martha's face. Yes, I believe he does. The next day, Katherine sought out Nathan, finding him in the stables checking his tack. I'm coming with you, she announced without preamble. Nathan looked up, surprise giving way to pleasure. Your father agreed. Both my parents did, she confirmed. On the condition that I'll be safe and treated with respect. You have my word, Nathan said solemnly. No one will disrespect you on my watch. Katherine nodded, satisfied. When do we leave? 3 days. We'll head south to meet the herd, then start the drive north through Colorado and Wyoming, ending in Montana territory. And my duties, like I said, cooking mainly, but I meant what I said about you riding too. A good trail boss uses all the skills at his disposal, and I'd be a fool to waste yours. Katherine smiled. Then we have a deal, Mr. Wade. Nathan extended his hand and she took it, feeling a spark of electricity at his touch. Deal, Miss Turner. The next 3 days passed in a flurry of preparations. Martha altered a pair of James's old trousers to fit Katherine and sewed her several sturdy shirts. Katherine packed her few possessions into saddlebags, including a small mirror, a brush, and the book of poetry Nathan had given her before he left years ago, a keepsake she'd never mentioned to anyone. On the morning of their departure, the entire Turner family gathered in the yard to see them off. Nathan's 2 companions, Pete and Sam, along with the Turner hands who would be joining them, waited patiently on horseback. Martha hugged her daughter fiercely. Right when you can. I will, Ma, I promise. James approached, leading Katherine's mare, Sadie. She's all packed and ready, he said, helping his daughter mount. Then, turning to Nathan, he added, You take care of my girl, Wade. With my life, sir, Nathan replied, the sincerity in his voice unmistakable. As they rode away from the ranch, Katherine felt a mixture of excitement and trepidation. She'd never been more than 20 miles from Quartz Hill in her entire life. Now she was setting off on a journey of hundreds of miles with a man she was increasingly certain she was falling in love with. The first day's ride was easy, following well-traveled roads south toward the Texas border, where the cattle had been gathered. Katherine rode alongside Nathan, who pointed out landmarks and shared stories of his travels. By nightfall, they'd covered 30 miles, and Katherine's muscles ached in ways she hadn't anticipated. As they set up camp, she tried not to show her discomfort, busying herself with preparing dinner for the small crew. The men gave her space, treating her with a polite distance that was both comforting and isolating. After dinner, as the others bedded down for the night, Nathan joined her by the fire. How are you holding up? He asked, offering her a cup of coffee. Katherine accepted it gratefully. I'm fine. Just a bit sore. It gets easier, he assured her. By the end of the drive, you'll be riding as if you were born on horseback. She smiled tiredly. I hope so. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the flames dance. Finally, Katherine spoke. Why did you leave, Nate, 7 years ago? You never said goodbye. Nathan stared into his coffee. I was young and foolish, thought I needed to make my fortune before I could come back and—" He trailed off. "And what?" she prompted. He looked up, his eyes reflecting the firelight. "And be worthy of the girl I left behind." Catherine's breath caught. "Me? Always you, Katie," he said softly. "But when I finally saved enough to come back, I heard you were engaged, to Henderson of all people." "It wasn't by choice," she reminded him. "I know that now." He hesitated. "Can I ask you something personal?" She nodded cautiously. "That wedding dress, the one that didn't fit, was it important to you?" Katherine sighed. "It was my mother's. She altered it for me, but—" She gestured to her body. "I'm not exactly built like she was." Nathan's eyes traveled over her, not with judgment but with appreciation. "You're beautiful, Katie, every inch of you." Heat flooded her cheeks. "You don't have to say that." "I'm not saying it because I have to. I'm saying it because it's true." He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "The right dress isn't the one that makes you smaller. It's the one that celebrates who you are." Catherine's eyes filled with tears. "No one's ever said anything like that to me before." "Then they've been blind," Nathan said simply. "Get some rest, Katie. We've got a long ride ahead of us tomorrow." As Katherine settled into her bedroll, his words echoed in her mind. For the first time in years, she fell asleep without worrying about her size or what others thought of her. The next day brought them to the herd 500 head of longhorn cattle gathered on a vast plain. Katherine had never seen so many animals in one place, and the sight took her breath away. "Impressive, isn't it?" Nathan said, riding up beside her. She nodded, watching as the cowboys worked to keep the herd together. "How do you manage so many?" Carefully, he grinned. "And with a lot of help. Come on, I'll introduce you to the rest of the crew." The full outfit consisted of 12 men, including Nathan, Pete, Sam, and the 2 Turner hands. The others were a diverse group, a former slave named Isaac who served as the trail scout, twin brothers from Georgia who could ride like centaurs, a grizzled old-timer called Doc who wasn't a doctor but knew enough about cattle ailments to serve as one, and several younger cowboys eager to prove themselves. Nathan introduced Katherine as the outfit's cook and his personal assistant. The men tipped their hats respectfully, though she could see curiosity and skepticism in some of their eyes. "A woman on a cattle drive," one of the younger cowboys muttered. "That's asking for trouble." "The only trouble," Nathan said loudly, "will be for any man who disrespects Miss Turner. She's part of this outfit now, and she'll be treated accordingly." "Understood." A chorus of "Yes, boss" followed, and Katherine felt a surge of gratitude for Nathan's public support. That night, as she prepared dinner for the expanded crew, Katherine found herself enjoying the challenge. Cooking over an open fire for 12 hungry men wasn't easy, but there was satisfaction in seeing empty plates and hearing murmurs of appreciation. After dinner, as the men relaxed around the fire, one of the Georgia twins, Illy or Elijah, she couldn't tell them apart yet pulled out a harmonica and began to play. The sweet, mournful notes drifted over the camp, and soon others joined in, singing songs of home and heartache. Katherine, sitting slightly apart, felt a pang of homesickness. Nathan noticed and moved to sit beside her. "You're doing great," he said quietly. "The men are already saying you're the best cook they've had on a drive." She smiled, warmed by the praise. "I never thought I'd be here doing this." "Having regrets?" "No," she said truthfully. "It's just different than I imagined." Nathan nodded. "The first drive is always the hardest, but it gets under your skin, this life. The open sky, the freedom of it." "Is that why you never came back? The freedom?" He considered this. "Partly. But mostly I was trying to prove something to myself, to my father's ghost too." "To me," Katherine suggested. Nathan smiled ruefully. "To you, though I'm not sure you needed proving to." Before she could respond, Isaac approached, his expression serious. "Boss, we've got riders approaching from the east, 6 of them." Nathan was on his feet instantly, his hand moving to the pistol at his hip. "Friendly? Can't tell yet, but they're riding hard." "Get the men ready," Nathan ordered. "Katherine, stay close to the wagon." As the cowboys scrambled to defensive positions, Katherine retreated to the chuck wagon, her heart pounding. From there, she watched as 6 riders emerged from the darkness into the circle of firelight. The leader was a broad-shouldered man with a cruel face, flanked by 5 equally rough-looking companions. But it was the man directly behind him that made Katherine's blood run cold. Charles Henderson. "Evening, gentlemen," the leader called. "Fine herd you've got here." Nathan stepped forward, his posture relaxed but alert. "It is. What can we do for you, Names Jackson?" the man said. "Me and my boys are looking for work. Heard you might be hiring." "Heard wrong," Nathan replied. "My outfit's full up." Jackson's eyes narrowed, scanning the camp until they landed on Katherine. A slow smile spread across his face. "Well, well, what have we here? Didn't realize this was that kind of outfit." Nathan's hand tightened on his gun. "The lady is our cook, and she's none of your concern." Charles urged his horse forward. "She's my fiancée, actually. Katherine, come here." Katherine stood her ground. "I'm not your fiancée, Charles. I made that clear." "You're confused," Charles said, his voice dripping with false concern. "Your father sent me to bring you home." "My father knows exactly where I am," Katherine replied, anger replacing her fear. "And who I'm with." Jackson laughed, a harsh sound. "Sounds like we've got ourselves a little lover's quarrel. Maybe we should let the lady decide who she wants to ride with." "She's already decided," Nathan said, stepping between the riders and Katherine. "Now I suggest you boys move along. We're not looking for trouble." "That's so," Jackson drawled, his hand moving to his gun, "because trouble seems to have found you anyway." For a tense moment, no one moved. Then Doc, the old-timer, shifted slightly, revealing the shotgun in his hands. The twins moved to flank Nathan, and Isaac circled behind the intruders, his rifle raised. Jackson assessed the situation, then slowly raised his hands. "No need for bloodshed. We'll be on our way." He turned his horse, but not before adding, "for now." As the riders disappeared into the darkness, Charles lingering to glare hatefully at Katherine, the tension in the camp remained high. "They'll be back," Isaac predicted, rejoining the group. Nathan nodded grimly. "With more men, likely." "We'll double the watch tonight." He turned to Katherine. "You okay?" She nodded, though her hands were shaking. "How did Charles find us?" "Small towns have big mouths," Nathan said. "And money buys information. I'm guessing Henderson hired Jackson and his gang to cause trouble. Because of me." Katherine asked, guilt washing over her. "Because of me," Nathan corrected. "I embarrassed him in front of you. Men like Henderson don't forget that kind of thing." That night, Katherine barely slept, jumping at every sound. When dawn broke, Nathan made a decision. "We're changing our route," he announced to the outfit. "Taking the western trail through the mountains. It's longer but less traveled." "That's rough country, boss," Pete warned. "Harder on the cattle and us." "Better than riding into an ambush," Nathan replied. "Jackson and Henderson won't expect us to go that way." The men murmured their agreement, and preparations began immediately. Katherine helped pack up the camp, working alongside the cowboys as if she'd been doing it her whole life. As they set out, Nathan rode beside her. "You sure you're up for this? The mountain trail is tougher than what we planned." Katherine straightened in her saddle. "I'm not turning back if that's what you're asking." He smiled, admiration in his eyes. "Wouldn't dream of suggesting it." The new route took them west into the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. The terrain grew steeper, the trails narrower, and the work harder. Katherine's duties expanded beyond cooking as every hand was needed to keep the herd moving. She rode drag the dustiest, least desirable position at the back of the herd without complaint, earning grudging respect from even the most skeptical cowboys. A week into the mountains, disaster struck. A sudden thunderstorm spooked the herd, sending hundreds of cattle stampeding down a narrow canyon. Nathan and the men worked frantically to turn them, but in the chaos, one of the younger cowboys, Billy, was thrown from his horse directly into the path of the onrushing longhorns. Katherine, riding nearby, didn't hesitate. She spurred Sadie forward, cutting in front of the stampede to reach Billy. In one fluid motion, she leaned from her saddle, grabbed him by his shirt, and hauled him onto her horse. Together, they raced ahead of the cattle until they reached safety. When the herd was finally under control, and the losses assessed miraculously, only a dozen cattle gone over a cliff, Nathan found Katherine tending to Billy's injuries. "Just a broken arm and some bruises," she reported, finishing a makeshift splint. "He'll mend." Nathan looked at her with something close to awe. "You saved his life. That was either the bravest or the most foolhardy thing I've ever seen." Katherine shrugged, though she couldn't hide her pride. "Anyone would have done the same." "No," Nathan said, shaking his head. "They wouldn't have." "You're something special, Katie Turner." From that day forward, Katherine's place in the outfit was secured. She was no longer just the cook or Nathan's assistant, she was one of them, a valued member of the team. She still prepared meals, but she also rode with the herd, helped with the nightly count, and even stood watch. As they pushed deeper into the mountains, Nathan and Katherine found themselves drawing closer. In quiet moments by the fire, they shared stories and dreams, rediscovering the friendship they'd once had and discovering the deeper connection that had grown between them. One evening, as they stood watch together on a ridge overlooking the sleeping herd, Nathan broached a subject that had been on his mind. "I've been thinking about what happens after Montana," he said, his eyes on the horizon. Katherine's heart fluttered. "Oh. I've saved enough over the years to buy a small spread. Good land, water rights, room to grow." He turned to her, his expression serious. "I was thinking maybe I'd settle down. In Montana," she asked, trying to keep the disappointment from her voice, "or Wyoming, or Colorado." He stepped closer. "Or Texas. Wherever you want to be, Katie," her breath caught. "What are you saying, Nate?" "I'm saying that 7 years ago I left Quartz Hill to make something of myself, to be worthy of coming back for you. And now here you are, riding beside me, braver and more beautiful than I ever imagined." He took her hands in his. "I'm saying that I love you, Katie Turner. I think I always have." Tears welled in Katherine's eyes. "I love you too, Nate." But what?" he asked, his smile faltering. "Look at me," she said, gesturing to herself. I'm not what most men want. I couldn't even fit into a wedding dress." Nathan's expression softened. "Katie, do you really think I care about that? Your size is part of who you are, and I love every inch of you. If a dress doesn't fit, then the dress is wrong, not you." A tear slipped down her cheek. "You really mean that?" "With all my heart," he said, drawing her close. "If you'll have me, I promise to love all of you every day for the rest of our lives." Their first kiss was gentle, a promise of more to come. When they finally pulled apart, Katherine was smiling through her tears. "Is that a yes?" Nathan asked, hope shining in his eyes. "It's a yes," she confirmed. "But first, we have a herd to deliver and a ranch to save." The journey continued, with new challenges at every turn. They faced a mountain lion attack that cost them 3 calves, a river crossing that nearly drowned 2 cowboys, and a tense encounter with a Shoshone hunting party that ended peacefully thanks to Isaac's knowledge of their language and customs. Through it all, Katherine and Nathan's bond deepened. They kept their relationship discreet around the men, but everyone in the outfit knew something had changed between them. There were knowing glances and good-natured teasing, but always with respect. As they descended from the mountains into the high plains of Wyoming, Katherine received her first letter from home, delivered by a rider from a passing stagecoach. Her mother wrote that all was well at the ranch, though the bank was growing impatient. There was also news that Charles Henderson's father had suffered a stroke, leaving Charles in charge of the bank and even more determined to acquire the Turner land. "We need to finish this drive and get back," Katherine told Nathan after sharing the letter's contents. "Before Charles can cause more trouble," Nathan nodded grimly. "We're making good time. Another 3 weeks should see us to the railhead in Montana." Those 3 weeks proved the most challenging yet. The weather turned cold, with early autumn bringing freezing rain and even snow at higher elevations. The cattle grew restless, harder to control. The men were tired, the long journey taking its toll on body and spirit, but Katherine's presence was a constant source of morale. Her cooking warmed their bellies, her singing around the campfire lifted their hearts, and her unwavering determination inspired them all to push forward. Finally, as October painted the landscape in reds and golds, they crested a rise and saw the bustling railhead town of Billings spread out below them. "We made it," Katherine breathed, scarcely believing it. Nathan reached over, squeezing her hand. "We did, together." The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. The cattle were counted, inspected, and loaded onto trains bound for Chicago. Nathan negotiated a price that exceeded even his expectations, and the men celebrated their success with a night on the town, though Katherine politely declined to join that particular festivity. Instead, she spent the evening in her hotel room, the first real bed she'd slept in for months, writing a long letter to her parents, detailing their journey and their plans for the future. When a knock came at her door, she knew without looking that it was Nathan. "Come in," she called, finishing her letter with a flourish. Nathan entered, freshly bathed and shaved, looking more handsome than ever in a new shirt and vest. "Not joining the celebration?" he asked, sitting on the edge of her bed. "I thought I'd leave the drinking and carousing to the men," she smiled. "Besides, I had writing to do." "Telling your parents about us," she nodded, "and about the money." Nathan had insisted on paying her twice what he'd originally offered, plus a share of the profits from the cattle sale. It was enough to pay off the bank note with plenty to spare. "Good," he said, taking her hand, "because I have something to ask you, and I'd like them to hear it from you first." Katherine's heart raced as Nathan slid from the bed to one knee, pulling a small box from his pocket. "Katherine Turner," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "These past months have been the greatest adventure of my life. Not because of the cattle or the country we crossed, but because I got to share it all with you." He opened the box, revealing a simple gold band with a small diamond. "Will you marry me?" Tears of joy spilled down Katherine's cheeks. "Yes, Nate. Yes, I'll marry you." He slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms for a kiss that promised a lifetime of love and adventure. The journey home was considerably easier than the outbound trip by train rather than horseback, with comfortable sleeping cars and regular meals in the dining car. The outfit had disbanded in Montana, each man taking his pay and heading his own way, though many promised to look for work with Nathan in the future. As the train steamed south through Wyoming and Colorado, Katherine and Nathan made plans. They would return to Quartz Hill, pay off the Turner bank note, and then decide where to establish their own ranch. Nathan favored staying close to her family, and Katherine couldn't argue with that logic. "What about a wedding?" he asked one evening as they watched the landscape roll by. "Any thoughts on that?" Katherine hesitated. "Something simple, I think, just family and close friends." "An address?" Nathan prompted gently. Is your mother still important to you? She considered this. It was never about the dress, really. It was about tradition, about carrying on something from the past. But I think, she smiled, taking his hand, I think I'd prefer to start our own traditions. Nathan kissed her knuckles. I like the sound of that. They arrived in Quartz Hill on a crisp November day, the town much as they'd left it months before. Word of their return spread quickly, and by the time they reached the Turner ranch, Martha and James were waiting on the porch, faces alight with joy. Martha embraced her daughter, then held her at arm's length, studying her with a mother's keen eye. You've changed, she declared. There's strength in you I've never seen before. It was always there, Katherine replied, smiling at Nathan. I just needed the right person to help me see it. James shook Nathan's hand warmly, then pulled him into a hug. Thank you for bringing her back safely. She brought herself back, Nathan corrected, and saved more than a few of us along the way. Over dinner, Katherine and Nathan shared tales of their journey, carefully editing some of the more harrowing moments to spare her parents unnecessary worry. When they announced their engagement, Martha cried happy tears, and James proposed a toast to the future. There's something else, Katherine said, once the congratulations had subsided. She withdrew an envelope from her pocket and handed it to her father. This is for you and Ma, to save the ranch. James opened it, his eyes widening at the sight of the bank draft inside. Katie, this is more than enough to pay off the note. Much more. I earned it, she said proudly. Every penny. We never doubted you would, Martha said, her voice thick with emotion. The next morning, Katherine and Nathan rode into town to settle the bank matter once and for all. As they entered the Henderson Bank and Trust, conversations halted and all eyes turned to them. Charles Henderson sat behind his father's desk, his face darkening at the sight of them. Well, well, he drawled. Look what the wind blew in. Come to beg for an extension, Katherine. Actually, she said, approaching the desk confidently, I've come to pay off my father's note, in full. She placed the bank draft on the desk. Charles stared at it, disbelief giving way to anger. Where did you get this kind of money? I earned it, Katherine replied simply. On a cattle drive to Montana Territory, Charles sneered. You, on a cattle drive, doing what exactly? Everything that needed doing, Nathan interjected, his voice cold. Katherine is the most capable woman I've ever met, something you were too blind to see. Charles ignored him, focusing his spite on Katherine. So you sold yourself to the highest bidder after all. How appropriate. Before Nathan could react, Katherine laughed a genuine, joyful sound that seemed to confuse Charles more than any retort could have. Oh, Charles, she said, pity in her voice. I didn't sell anything. I found my worth, and it's far greater than you ever imagined. She gestured to the bank draft. Now, will you honor that, or shall I take my business elsewhere? Red-faced, Charles snatched up the draft and scribbled a receipt. Your father's note is paid. Now get out of my bank. Gladly, Katherine said, taking the receipt. As they turned to leave, she added over her shoulder, by the way, you're invited to the wedding. Nathan and I are getting married in the spring. Outside, Nathan pulled her close, laughing. Did you see his face? I thought he might explode. Katherine grinned, feeling lighter than she had in years. Let him stew. We have better things to worry about. The winter passed in a flurry of wedding preparations and ranch improvements. Nathan purchased land adjacent to the Turner property, effectively doubling its size, and began building a house for himself and Katherine. Word of their successful cattle drive spread, and several ranchers approached Nathan about joining forces for the next season. As for Katherine, she found herself embraced by the community in a way she'd never experienced before. Her journey had transformed her in the eyes of the townspeople. No longer was she the big girl, to be pitied or overlooked. She was Katherine Turner, who had ridden with cowboys and faced danger with courage. Young girls looked up to her, women sought her advice, and men treated her with newfound respect. When the time came to select a wedding dress, Katherine made a decision that surprised everyone except Nathan. Instead of trying to alter her mother's gown or purchasing a traditional white dress from the catalog, she commissioned Mrs. Lee, the town's seamstress, to create something entirely new. "I want something practical," she told the elderly Chinese woman. "Something I can wear again. And I want it to be blue, the color of the sky on the day Nathan proposed." Mrs. Lee nodded approvingly. "Blue for loyalty and truth. Very good choice." The resulting dress was a masterpiece of practicality and beauty, a deep blue silk with simple lines that flattered Katherine's figure rather than trying to disguise it. When she tried it on for the final fitting, Mrs. Lee clapped her hands in delight. "Perfect," she declared. "Like it was made for you." Katherine smiled at her reflection. "It was made for me. That's the difference." The wedding took place on the first day of spring, with the mountains still capped in snow but the valley blooming with new life. The ceremony was held at the Turner Ranch, under an arch of wildflowers that Nathan had insisted on building himself. As Katherine walked toward her future husband, escorted by her father, she felt none of the insecurity that had plagued her for so many years. In her blue dress, with flowers in her hair and joy in her heart, she knew she was exactly where she was meant to be, exactly as she was meant to be. Nathan watched her approach, love shining in his eyes. When she reached him, he took her hands and whispered, "You're the most beautiful bride I've ever seen." The preacher began the ceremony, but Katherine barely heard the familiar words. She was lost in Nathan's gaze, in the promise of the life they would build together. When it came time for the vows, Nathan surprised her by setting aside the traditional words in favor of his own. "Katherine Turner," he began, his voice steady and sure, "I take you as you are, loving all of you. Your strength, your kindness, your courage, and your heart. I promise to stand beside you in all things, to cherish every moment, and to love you more each day than I did the day before. This is my solemn vow." Tears glistened in Katherine's eyes as she responded with her own promise. "Nathan Wade, I take you as you are, loving all of you. Your honor, your gentleness, your wisdom, and your spirit. I promise to ride beside you through whatever comes, to share in your joys and your burdens, and to love you with everything I am. This is my solemn vow." The celebration lasted well into the night, with dancing and feasting and storytelling. The cowboys from the cattle drive who had remained in the area regaled the guests with tales of Katherine's exploits, each story more exaggerated than the last, until she was practically a legend. Through it all, Nathan kept her close, his pride in his new wife evident to everyone. And when they finally escaped to the new house he had built for them, he carried her across the threshold as if she weighed nothing at all. "Welcome home, Mrs. Wade," he said, setting her gently on her feet. Katherine looked around at the simple but beautiful home, the large windows that let in the mountain light, the sturdy furniture built to last generations, the kitchen spacious enough for her to cook for a crowd. "It's perfect," she said, turning back to her husband. "Everything I could have wanted." Nathan pulled her into his arms. "I wanted to give you a place where you'll always feel like you belong, where you'll never have to change to fit." Katherine kissed him, pouring all her love into the gesture. "I already have that place," she whispered against his lips, "right here with you." 10 years later, the Wade Ranch had grown into one of the most successful operations in Colorado Territory. Nathan and Katherine had expanded their holdings, developed new breeding methods, and established a reputation for fair dealing and quality cattle. Their family had grown as well. 8-year-old James, named for his grandfather, was already showing his father's skill with horses. 6-year-old twins Martha and Mary had their mother's determination and love of adventure. And 3-year-old Samuel toddled after his older siblings, trying to keep up with their games. On the anniversary of their wedding, Nathan surprised Katherine with a picnic on the ridge overlooking their property, the same spot where they had watched their first sunset together after returning from the cattle drive. "Happy anniversary, my love," he said, pouring her a glass of wine. Katherine leaned against him, contentment washing over her as she surveyed their domain. The ranch house, expanded twice to accommodate their growing family. The barns and corrals filled with healthy livestock. The bunkhouse where seasonal hands stayed during the busy months. And beyond it all, the mountains that had once seemed like such an impossible obstacle, now a familiar part of their daily view. 10 years, she marveled. Sometimes it feels like yesterday that we were dodging stampedes and outrunning bandits. Nathan laughed, wrapping an arm around her waist. Those were exciting times, but I wouldn't trade what we have now for all the adventure in the world. Katherine turned to face him, the love she felt as strong as it had been on their wedding day. "Neither would I, though I do sometimes miss the open trail." "Well," Nathan said, a mischievous glint in his eye, "I've been thinking. James is old enough to understand the basics of ranching. Your parents are here to help with the little ones. What would you say to a small cattle drive? Just you and me and a few hands like the old days." Katherine's eyes lit up. "Really? You'd want to do that?" "I'd want to do anything that puts that smile on your face," he said, cupping her cheek. "Besides, there's good money in driving a select herd to the new settlements up north." "Always the businessman," she teased, leaning into his touch. "Always your husband," he corrected, kissing her softly. "Still loving all of you every day, just like I promised." As the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, just as it had on the day he proposed, Katherine knew that the journey they had begun all those years ago was far from over. There would be new trails to blaze, new challenges to face, new joys to discover together. But one thing would never change: the love between a woman who had once believed herself too large to fit a wedding dress, and the cowboy who had shown her that she was perfect exactly as she was.